When German engineers finally laid hands on America's most closely guarded secret, disbelief washed over them. The technology concealed within was so advanced, so utterly impossible for the era, that their own scientists initially refused to accept its reality. What they discovered inside that casing would not only alter the course of warfare, but would force them to confront a terrifying truth about their enemy. It began with an impossible device. The year was 1943. On a scarred battlefield, German forces stumbled upon an anomaly, an artillery shell that had failed to detonate upon impact. Typically, these munitions were designed to explode in midair, raining shrapnel over enemy positions. But this specific unit had remained intact. Recognizing its potential intelligence value, commanders demanded immediate answers, rushing the unexploded ordnance to the Reich's most brilliant minds. The men tasked with the analysis were the elite of German engineering, the same minds behind advanced rocketry and ballistics. They were accustomed to innovation, but as they carefully pried open the American shell, the laboratory fell silent. They looked at one another, words failing them. Nestled inside was a mechanism smaller than a coffee cup, a complex web of miniature glass vacuum tubes, gossamer-thin wiring, and delicate components that seemed far too fragile for the brutality of war. One scientist, his hands trembling slightly, lifted the device. He turned it over, examining the intricate craftsmanship, before murmuring a realization that would haunt his team. "This should not exist," he said quietly. His colleagues leaned in, inspecting the components under the glare of the work lights. The vacuum tubes were thinner than a pencil. The wiring was barely visible to the naked eye. The sheer physics involved were baffling. This delicate array of glass and wire had been fired from a heavy cannon. It had survived gravitational forces that would crush a brick and had spun through the air at thousands of revolutions per minute. Yet, miraculously, nothing was broken. German engineers had attempted to build similar proximity fuses years prior, failing every time as their prototypes shattered under the violence of the launch. Now, they held undeniable proof that the Americans had solved the impossible. Methodically, the team dismantled the device. They photographed every angle and measured every wire, working tirelessly for days. What they uncovered challenged their understanding of military science. This was a miniature radar set, designed to emit radio waves that bounced off enemy aircraft. When the signal returned, the device calculated the distance instantly. No timer was set. No physical contact was needed. It simply knew exactly when to detonate for maximum lethality. German scientists knew the theory behind radio proximity fuses. They had drawn similar concepts on paper, but executing it seemed insurmountable. The components required were too small and the conditions too extreme. Yet, here it was, functioning flawlessly. One engineer held up a component no larger than his fingernail. "They manufactured this," he whispered, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "Not one, not 10, but thousands of them." The room fell into a heavy silence. The implications were staggering. To build a single, perfect unit in a sterile lab was one thing. To churn them out on assembly lines with tolerances smaller than a human hair required an industrial capability that Germany did not possess. They knew their own factories struggled to produce even simple parts with such consistency. The Americans, however, were mass-producing these complex instruments of war, where a single failure meant a wasted shot. The lead scientist sat to compose his official report. He had consulted the Reich's top experts and tested every circuit. Now, he struggled to find language adequate to describe the achievement. It wasn't just superior engineering. It was a synthesis of scientific brilliance and overwhelming industrial power, a level of coordination between research, manufacturing, and military planning that Germany could not replicate. He settled on a single word, underlining it 3 times in his notebook. That word would soon echo through the highest levels of the German military command. It was simple, honest, and devastating. Unattainable. The report concluded that American manufacturing capability was not just superior, but fundamentally unattainable for the German Reich. The term was precise. It signified that even if Germany possessed the blueprints and understood every secret, they still could not build this device. Their factories lacked the tooling, their supply chains were insufficient, and their industrial base was not organized for such mass precision. While some initially argued that German engineering was superior, the numbers silenced them. America was producing these fuses faster than Germany could produce the aircraft they were designed to destroy. The introduction of the proximity fuse altered the trajectory of the war almost overnight. Allied bombers suffered fewer losses, while anti-aircraft fire became lethally effective. For German pilots, the skies became a death trap. Shells now seemed to predict their movements, detonating with terrifying accuracy. The psychological toll was immense. Despite changing altitudes and tactics, the German forces found no consistent defense against a weapon that could think for itself. While the Luftwaffe scrambled for solutions, American industry relentlessly accelerated. Thousands of units became tens of thousands by the war's end. Over 22 million of these proximity fuses had rolled off assembly lines, each meeting the same rigorous standards. German scientists studying captured units were forced to admit that this was not merely a clever invention, but the product of an industrial juggernaut operating at a scale they could not comprehend. Years after the smoke had cleared, those same German scientists were interviewed about the discovery. Their reflections were consistent. It was not the science that humbled them. Any brilliant mind could eventually solve the physics. It was the execution, the ability to transition from a laboratory prototype to mass production without a drop in quality was the true marvel. As one scientist noted, "We could build one, they built millions. That is not just engineering, that is a different kind of power." The saga of the proximity fuse taught a harsh, enduring lesson. Victory requires more than tactical genius or brave soldiers. It demands an industrial backbone capable of manufacturing complex miracles as if they were common goods. America had built that system. Germany had not. That disparity, more than any single battle, decided the fate of the war. If this piece of history intrigued you, subscribe for more untold stories and share your thoughts in the comments below.